Listen to this podcast, or I'll gut you.
Welcome back, Horror Hounds, to Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show podcast.
I'm Mike Ghostman Pickle.
And I'm James Rivera. Today we have a special on 2021 horror movies. We're going to be giving you a preview of what horror movies to expect this year. But before we get to that, we have to get to
Horror Show News.
Alrighty then. Olivia Wilde directs Don't Worry Darling, starring Florence Pugh.
Devon Sawwa added to the Chucky television series.
The Fangoria teamed with Shudder for the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards coming April 18th.
The Monster movie gets a go-ahead with Rob Zombie at Universal Studios.
And Elizabeth Banks is going to direct Cocaine Bear, based on a true story.
Interesting. Evil Dead Rise will take place in New Zealand, filming to begin very soon.
And finally, the director of Wormwood, Road of the Dead is directing and co-writing a vampire film that's being compared to Near Dark. Exciting.
Cool. So what's the first news item, Mr. Michael?
All right, I'm really excited about this one. Olivia Wilde recently directed a movie called Booksmart. It's like a coming-of-age comedy drama. Mm-hmm. Really good. I was really impressed by it. So I love when a director comes out of the box with a great movie like that, and then they go into the horror thriller genre. Mm-hmm. So Olivia Wilde is directing Don't Worry Darling, starring Florence Pugh. Filming has wrapped on the new psychological thriller, and it stars Florence Pugh and Harry Styles. Harry Styles replaced Shia LaBeouf, who was fired from the film because Olivia Wilde has a no asshole policy on her sets.
And to be clear, so the audience is aware, he was fired before the sex abuse, before the controversy and the scandal broke out. It's just for his behavior on set.
Yes, she has zero tolerance for assholes on her set, so she booted him out. So Florence Pugh is going to play an unhappy housewife in the 50s who discovers a disturbing truth while her loving husband hides a dark secret. Sounds interesting.
Sounds very, very interesting. I mean, I really dug, what was the movie? Booksmart?
Booksmart, yes.
Which was so, I don't know, a lot of people call it like a female Superbad, and it actually kind of is. I think that's a valid comparison. At the same time, I feel like it's still creative enough to stand up on its own. There's a lot of interesting things going on there. I'm thinking particularly of the sequence where they're on drugs and they imagine themselves as Barbie dolls.
Yeah.
I imagine a sequence like that, but inverted towards horror and less towards comedy, and you could have something really special. So it'll be interesting to see what she has cooked up.
Yeah, that was, as far as I'm concerned, that's an instant classic. It's instantly rewatchable. We watched it probably like 10 times already.
Yeah.
So good. So I love when directors like that go to horror. More directors like that in horror. Bring on some original stuff.
All right, we'll see. Another bit of interesting news, Devon Sawwa has been added to the Chucky series, hot off of his highly acclaimed turn in The Fanatic with acclaimed filmmaker Fred Durst. Just kidding. The Final Destination star is joining the cast, but his role is being kept under wraps. I'm pretty excited about this. I like Devon Sawwa. I feel like that movie was dreadful. The Fanatic, that's probably his most recent excursion into horror, and he's dreadful in it. But I think people think of him more for like Final Destinations or Idle Hands or something like that. So it's nice to see him get a chance in a good horror movie setting. No more working with Fred Durst. No more Limp Bizkit films. Another interesting thing I found out about this show, this show is going to have 4 teenage leads in it. We're going to have Zachary Arthur from Transparent, Teo Briones from Ratched, the show Ratched, Olivia Allen from the show Daybreak, and Bjorn Amarson from The Seventh Day. The character Jake Weber, played by by Zachary Arthur, is processing his mother's death, which makes him a target for Chucky. Lexi Taylor, played by Lynn, is Junior's unbearable girlfriend and a school bully. Jake's cousin, Junior Weber, played by Briones, is outgoing and the opposite in Jake in every way. And I'm just reading what the studio has released about this. And Devon Lopez, played by Amarson, can't get enough of true crime stories and will naturally find himself pulled towards mysterious killings involving Chucky, the killer doll. So I found out more about the teenage leads than I did about Devon Sawwa's role. So they're keeping that under wraps. I don't wonder if he's going to be a villain. He's going to be a hero. I hope he plays the bad guy. I want to see him involved in the cult of Chucky. And there is a cult of Chucky, as we saw in the last film. There will be probably, I imagine, this is going to take place in a suburban neighborhood. I imagine with Chucky's newfound trick to multiply himself and put himself into multiple different bodies, it's going to be a neighborhood overrun with Chucky killer dolls. And let's be honest, this concept is better for a television series than it is a movie. I actually really enjoyed Cult of Chucky. Michael was not a fan, but I do think that this is a better setting to explore that idea. I'm fucking excited. I love that Don Mancini has complete control. I love that the creator, Don Mancini, has been attached to this since the original Child's Play, writing them all, and then eventually getting to direct Seed of Chucky, Curse of Chucky, and Cult of Chucky. He's going to be the head showrunner. We're getting Brad Dourif back. We're getting Jennifer Tilly back. I'm excited. Hope we get Shithead, the son. I don't know. Or Glenn or Glenda.
Yeah, I've been excited about this series ever since it was first announced. Mm-hmm. And then all the way through that remake nonsense, I was still looking ahead to the series. And now Devon Sawwa has joined the cast. I'm so happy for that guy because he's been slumming it for too many movies now. Just a few really like C horror films he's done in a row.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good to see him in a project that you know is going to be good because good people are involved.
Hey, maybe for season 2 we can get John Travolta in there.
I know, right? Get him out of that Fred Durst doldrum.
Yeah, give him a little Tarantino-style career revival on the horror scene. For it.
Our next item of news is the Fangoria Shudder Chainsaw Awards coming April 18th. Fangoria has teamed with Shudder for this year's Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. This is their attempt at a horror equivalent of the Oscars. Actor David Desmalkian, he's going to host. He's from The Dark Knight and Belko Experiment.
Interesting.
The categories include Best Wide Release, Best Limited Release. I like that already. I love those categories being separated. Best First Feature, Best Streaming Feature, Best Streaming Premiere, Best International Movie, Best Series, Best Lead Performance, Best Supporting Performance, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Score, Best Makeup Effects, Creature Effects, Nonfiction, Best Kill. I'm excited about that one. And a sample of some of the nominees in the major categories. Best Wide Release is Freaky, Gretel and Hansel, The Hunt, The Invisible Man, and Underwater. And the best limited...
We're in the minority, Michael. Just to break it.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
And the best limited release, this is the one I'm excited about. The limited release, Color Out of Space, The Dark and the Wicked, Possessor, Relic, and The Wolf of Snow Hollow. And then the best makeup...
2 to 3 movies in there that would be worthy of that title.
What's that?
There's at least 2 to 3 movies in that category that would all be worthy of winning that title or the award.
Oh, definitely. And then the best makeup effects category is Freaky, The Mortuary Collection, Gretel and Hansel, Random Acts of Violence, and Possessor.
Interesting. I'm really excited. Some of those movies that they nominated are really good, and I'm not going to share my opinion on any of them, but I've seen a few that were mentioned there. I'm going to save that for next week when we do our belated Best of 2020 horror. But seems like some good categories, some good films, some good selections. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the best limited release especially has some great films, but I wish some of the more limited release movies would be peppered throughout these categories, because I look down through the categories and they're really saturated with the mainstream horror. I wish these awards would mix in a little more indie horror in there.
Yeah. So do I, but it seems to be an inevitability with any award show. And at the end of the day, the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards is still somewhat of a corporate award show at the end of the day. Even though it's more geared towards horror, I think it's probably easier for them to overlook some of the more limited releases, which is why they have to create its own category so it doesn't get ignored.
Yeah, and we don't have an award show for horror, so we'll take what we can get.
Exactly. So, another interesting bit of news that is sure to piss off and enrage half of the horror community and delight the other half. Rob Zombie has been selected by Universal to do the Munsters movie. It's going to be based on the classic series, The Munsters. As of right now, neither Zombie or Universal haven't officially given the word yet, but we all know it's going to happen. Per the report, Rob Zombie is calling upon his frequent collaborators to come out in this. We are going to be having Cherry Moon Zombie as Lily Munster, which is really not that shocking considering it's Rob Zombie, the matriarch of the family. Stars of Lords of Salem and Three from Hell, like Jeff Daniel Phillips, are going to be in there. He's going to be playing Herman. And Daniel Roebuck and Richard Brake, two other actors from Three from Hell, 31 Other Zombies, have also been cast in roles that are undisclosed. We're also going to have Jorge Garcia of Lost and Cassandra Peterson of Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. So, I already know the horror community is having a meltdown over this selection, and I actually kind of understand why. I'm not convinced that Rob Zombie's style and aesthetic fits the Munsters. However, having said that, I'd rather have Rob Zombie do a Munsters movie than some fucking corporate suit who doesn't understand anything about the series at all and is not actually a fan. Maybe he's not the best choice in the world for it because of his aesthetic style, but he at least is a genuine fan, and we're not going to get corporate mandated nonsense with Rob Zombie at the helm. So
Yeah.
I say it's more good than bad. And hell, fuck, you don't know. Rob Zombie is a big fan of the Munsters. He's and you could see it in all of his films. They're always watching old classic horror movies from the 30s and the 40s and the old television shows and old horror shows from the 50s and 60s. So I think he might surprise people. I think what people are worried about is him applying the redneck aesthetic and style to the Munsters universe. I think that's where most of the concern comes from. But I think there's a possibility that he might not do something like that. He is a fan. He knows what the show is, and I imagine he's going to try to be as faithful as possible and try to produce something cool. I have no idea what I'm going to think of it, but I have no doubt it's actually going to be a movie that's made with passion by a fan, and I'll settle for it.
But he loves that pulp horror style.
Yeah.
And he's implemented it into some of his videos and stuff for White Zombie and all that. So that aesthetic could fit with this, but I kind of hope the casting of Sherry Moon Zombie is a rumor, because I personally defend her as far as her being cast in all his films, because as far as I'm concerned, every film of his that she's been cast in, she was a perfect fit, and she did a great job, even Lords of Salem. So I never got the complaint about her, but this time I do. I'm like, all right, that's a little shoehorny, you know?
I think I understand that too. I understand the skepticism because that's not really the type of actress that I really picture for that role, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. And I'm another one. I think that Sherry Moon gets unfairly shit upon, and I'm like, directors have muses. That's kind of normal to be in love with somebody and be inspired to write roles for them or to cast them in things. Like art house filmmakers like Fellini used to do it. So if you could accept it from people like that, you could accept it from fucking Rob Zombie. However, it is an unusual choice, and I get why people might question it. I hope it's a rumor too, but if it's not, let's just hope for the best. You never know what's going to happen. Like I said, you got to keep your mind open with these things, and I'm always open anytime an artist is going to get free reign over a movie instead of a studio. So I get a lot of the complaints. I understand. I hear you, some of you horror fans who think this is wrong, and I even agree with you to a certain extent. But let's wait to see the finished product before we start jumping to conclusions about anything.
Yeah, because I haven't seen a bad performance from her yet. I mean,
No.
She was even good in 31. She was the best thing about 31.
That movie's dreadful too. But
Yes, the rest of it that was bad.
yeah, I think on Letterboxd I gave that movie 1 out of 5 stars, and if it were not for Sherry Moon Zombie, it probably would have got half a star out of 5. So that half a star was for her.
Yeah, so she shows you she can play a villain and she can play like a regular person too.
Yeah, she could be a victim, and she was in Halloween as a mom, as a stripper, as a struggling mother who's just trying to make it for her kids. So I'm going to give her a chance in this role. It's not who I would have picked. And for all you know, it's just a rumor. We're still speculating at this point, and you might be shocked when we find out when the full cast is actually revealed.
Yeah, and say what you will about Rob Zombie, I just don't think he would shoehorn her in there if she just completely wasn't right for it.
Yeah,
I'm sure he would only cast her if she tried it out and nailed it, so.
Yep, I agree.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that one.
So will I. We'll see when it comes out, though.
So on this one, this next story, I don't know what to think about this. Elizabeth Banks to direct Cocaine Bear, based on a true story. Elizabeth Banks, who was in Slither, awesome horror film, but her last directorial effort, Charlie's Angels, was just awful. So we'll see. But she signed on to direct the true story thriller about an event that happened in Kentucky in 1985. It's written by Jimmy Warden, who his first script was Babysitter Killer Queen, another not so good sign. But it's about, in 1985, a 175-pound bear ate a duffel bag full of 70 pounds of smuggled cocaine that fell out of a plane, and he OD'd on it. So I haven't looked up exactly what he did before he OD'd on it, but it sounds like an interesting premise to explore.
It sounds like a movie that could only be made in a post-pandemic mad world, the post-pandemic mad world that we're in right now. So, I mean, this would have been the most bizarre story 5 or 6 years ago. And now when I hear him, like, yeah, that sounds about like the reality that we're living in right now. So yeah. I was able to accept that when I heard Elizabeth Banks is doing a Cocaine Bear movie based on the bear that was high off of his mind out of cocaine. I'm like, of course she is.
Yeah, of course she is.
We just went through 2020. So I don't know what to make of that, but we'll see. That's pretty odd.
Yeah, they're keeping details under wraps, but I'll keep an open mind about this one. There's some indications that it might be bad, but the batshit crazy premise of Elizabeth Banks directing Cocaine Bear is just too hilarious not to watch.
The premise is too juicy to pass on. I think that's what it comes down to.
And plus more women directors in horror. Bring 'em on.
Exactly. So let's hope she does a good job, and let's hope it's a bigger success than that Charlie's Angels reboot that she did.
Yeah.
All right, and our final news story before we get into our main topic for the day. Evil Dead Rise is going to take place in New Zealand, and the filming is going to beginning soon. Evil Dead star Bruce Campbell, who is actually a producer on this, did an interview with Knox News, and this is what he said. Planning to shoot the next Evil Dead movie in New Zealand later this year. It's set in a modern-day urban setting. It's out of the woods, so they're going to be shaking up the usual, I guess, the locale. We always associate Evil Dead with like a cabin in the woods, presence like that. All those crazy camera angles as they zoom through the woods and go through the cabin.
Yeah.
I wonder how that's going to translate into an urban setting with large swaths of people, having a camera zoom through a big city in New Zealand. So I think it's a good shake-up for the franchise. I think that's for sure. Obviously, Bruce Campbell sticking to his retirement plans. He's not going to be playing Ash in this. This is what he said. The main key with Evil Dead is that they're just regular people who are battling what seems to be an unstoppable evil, and that's where the horror comes from. It's not someone who's skilled. They're not fighting a soldier. They're not fighting a scientist. They're not fighting anybody more than your average neighbor. This one is going to be a similar thing. We're going to have a heroine, a woman in charge, and she's going to try and save her family. Another comment that Bruce Campbell made was that in this world, in this universe, the Necronomicon, that book gets around, and he's not the only person in this universe that encounters the book or has to deal with it. Several people have their own experiences with the Necronomicon, and he said he's excited about exploring this concept that in this universe, Ash would not be the only person who comes into possession of it or runs into it or runs afoul of it. So I guess from a storytelling view, in terms of like opening up the Evil Dead universe, that kind of makes sense that you would go on to other characters. However, if you're not satisfied with that and you want to see Bruce Campbell return to the role, you can catch the upcoming video game Evil Dead: The Game. The game's going to be released on is going to feature multiple maps from the franchise, and it's going to be released this year on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X4. I don't keep up with video games, so I'm sorry. PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Microsoft Windows. So if you want to get your Bruce Campbell Ash fix, you got to start playing some video games to get that. What do you think?
Well, I'll have to go over to one of my friends' houses and watch them play that, because I can't play those games like that. It's too complex for me.
Not a video gamer?
No.
I used to be, but over the years, as my schedule has gotten more stacked, and I already have a number of expensive habits that I'm not going to disclose on this podcast, but I don't need to be adding another time-consuming expensive habit to my list of already time-consuming expensive habits. So that's why I no longer play video games.
Yeah, exactly.
Way too much. It's a
Vice City was the last thing I played on a regular basis.
Really?
Yeah.
It was a while ago.
Yeah.
That was a while ago. So I'm excited. I want to see a new Evil Dead movie. All right, look, to me, Bruce Campbell, Ash is always going to be the icon of that universe. However, I am open up to the idea of having an Evil Dead universe where you encounter different characters. I think it makes sense in terms of the mythology, and I'm just hoping that it's a good movie. That's my biggest hope. I'm over the fact that Bruce Campbell's not going to be Ash anymore. I've made peace with it as a fanboy, and I just want to see some more good stories set in that universe, and I hope this gets the job done. I actually really like the Evil Dead remake. Michael doesn't. So we'll see how we come on it. See if we agree or disagree on this one.
Yeah, I really want an Evil Dead that I can connect with after that remake.
Which I really enjoyed.
And I'm the minority on that. I can't seem to find very many people that don't like it.
I swear. All right. Before we move on, how many people have we interviewed on the podcast? And I noticed, because I always smirk to myself when I hear it, when you ask, what are some of your new favorite horror movies, modern horror movies? How many of the people have we asked that have said the Evil Dead remake cited that as one of their new favorite of modern horror?
Quite a few, and I'm on the side.
Probably screaming inside your head, why?
No.
All right. So,
I had one more.
Oh, yeah, you have
story.
another news story. I forgot. Go on, Michael.
Yeah, I tacked one more onto the end because I found this while I was researching the other news stories. Director of Wormwood, Road of the Dead, one of my favorite modern zombie movies. He is directing and co-writing a vampire film that's being compared to Near Dark. So director Kia Roach Turner, who also directed Necrotronic with Ben O'Toole from Bloody Hell. It's a really good movie, just came out this year. An original script by Richard Kadrey, who strangely wrote 36 episodes of The Smurfs in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Dark West. It's a vampire revenge thriller set on the highways of Texas that follows two car thieves who accidentally T-pone a pair of vampires in the middle of the night. And it's in the vein of The Hitcher and Near Dark. Everything sounds awesome about that to me.
Yeah, it's definitely something I would check out. In the vein of Hitcher and Near Dark, a vampire film. Not only that, I think vampires are one of my favorite subgenres of horror, vampire films. There's so many that you could do with that. I actually think vampire stories have a lot more potential than zombie stories or stories about Frankenstein. I feel like there's what I like about vampire movies is you could do them in a variety of ways. You could do them, I don't know, you can make them very highbrow and respectable, like Bram Stoker's Dracula that Francis Ford Coppola directed, which is still a beautiful horror movie, and it's gory and it's exciting, but there's a classiness to it. There's like a beauty to it. Or you can do something like From Dusk Till Dawn, have it gritty, raw, nasty, in your face, something like that, or Near Dark. You can do it like Werner Herzog in his Nosferatu remake, more earthy, more cerebral. Also like Ganja and Hess, a more cerebral vampire story. You could get intense with it again, like John Carpenter's Vampires. It's one of those genres and one of those mythologies that I feel like you could. It's one of the few genres in horror that I feel works equally well with lowbrow and highbrow horror.
Yeah, like 30 Days a Night, where it's
That's
like these
another one.
vicious, animalistic vampires.
Yeah. And I like both versions of vampires. I like the classic Bela Lugosi, Gary Oldman style vampires and Nosferatus, and I like the more in-your-face, vicious, violent ones. So I'm always up for a vampire flick. One of my favorite genres in horror.
And speaking of vampires, I recently started rewatching a rewatch of True Blood because I never finished the whole series, so I just started it from the beginning. Holy hell, dude. Was that a melodramatic soap opera like I didn't even realize? So cheesy.
Your taste probably changed over the years too.
Yeah, but I'm still having a lot of fun with it, but I really recognize the campiness of it this time around.
The self-aware camp.
Yeah.
So our special for today is 2021 horror. We need to put an asterisk on this because about 1 year ago, Mike and I did a special on 2020 horror, all the upcoming 2020 horror. Podcast is a year old. If you go back and listen to it, it's completely irrelevant because more than half the things that we said were coming didn't come. We didn't know the global pandemic was going to hit. We were hyped up for Saint Maud in 2020. We barely got it this year. So this is an asterisk. Let's hope this time it actually goes according to plan.
Yeah.
Just a little note at the beginning.
Yeah, a lot of the movies that we reported on our most anticipated of 2020 are peppered through this list of
Funny?
2021 films.
I could go back and hear that and it's like, oh, that's really cute. That's so adorable. You guys think that you have all these big plans coming on. It's almost in hindsight, it's like, oh, isn't that sweet? You think you're going to get all that in 2020. Okay.
Well, hopefully a lot of these are set in stone because there's a lot of simultaneous releases in theaters, drive-ins, and also on demand or HBO Max and stuff like that. So
that's how it's going to have to be for a while. I think we'll continue to accept that.
So I'm going to start out with what we've seen so far of 2021. I haven't dived too much into 2021 horror yet. I've been concentrating on getting all the 2020 horror movies
out of the way
watched because next week we're going to do the best of 2020. Mm-hmm. So I've been swamped because there's a lot of good 2020 horror, dude. A lot more than I thought there would be.
There is a lot more than I thought it would be. I was worried that I didn't have enough and I would have to pile on too many movies to make a valid list. Mm-hmm. Then I started looking over the movies that I watched from 2020, which is only around 50 to 60 films, which is not really normal for me to watch. I usually watch at least more than that. But and I'm going through the list, more than 90% of what I watched was all horror. So I was like, oh, I already have a big pool to choose from. So now I'm just trying to catch up. So
and a really healthy mix of mainstream horror and indie horror too.
Yeah, more so
a lot of both.
More so indie horror because mainstream horror has been put a little bit more on hold. Big studios are more likely to hold them up. I think there's a little bit more indie this time.
Yeah. So. Also in 2021, there's a surprising amount of mainstream horror because there's all that mainstream horror that's held off from 2020, plus some new stuff. So I think there's a lot of mainstream horror coming in 2021 as well. So far, all I've seen is Saint Maud, which came out on January 29th. Everybody's talking about the Wrong Turn reboot. That came out January 26th. Have not seen that yet. I'm really excited because it's really dividing fans. We had Prisoners of Ghostland premiered on January 31st, and then Willy's Wonderland with where Nicolas Cage fights animatronic creatures. That came out on February 12th.
Yep, typical Nicolas Cage. So not too much so far, but what's ahead seems pretty packed. Some of which, like you said, are leftovers from last year. So we're going to have repeat movies from last year's preview special.
Yeah. So the first one coming up soon is The Unholy. It's coming out on April 2nd. It's Sam Raimi producing through Ghost House Pictures. It's written and directed by Evan. Okay, let me pause a little bit to pronounce this director's name. This director's name is Evan Spiliotopoulos. It's his first. Yeah, this is his first feature film, and he's the writer. He's a writer for a lot of Disney stuff, Hercules, and he wrote Charlie's Angels that Elizabeth Banks directed, and it's
Also,
based on a novel.
Beauty and the Beast remake, the Beauty and the Beast remake, and the Huntsman Winter's War.
Yeah, so he did a lot of stuff for Disney, and it's based on the novel written by James Herbert. And this one stars Jeffrey Dean Morgan from The Walking Dead, Carrie Elwes from Saw, William Sadler, Cricket Brown, and the synopsis is the film follows Alice, played by Cricket Brown, a young hearing-impaired girl who, after a supposed visitation from the Virgin Mary, is inexplicably able to hear, speak, and heal the sick. As word spreads and people from near and far flock to witness her miracles, a disgraced journalist, played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, hopes to revive his career and visits the small New England town to investigate. When terrifying events begin to happen all around, he starts to question if these phenomena are the works of the Virgin Mary or something much more sinister. And it's PG-13, which is unfortunate, but the trailer looks really solid.
It's PG-13, but it has Jeffrey Dean Morgan and William Sadler. So I think that's a little bit of a makeup. I want to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan and William Sadler in a horror movie again. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. The interesting choice of director, my first time for director, and not gonna lie, these choices don't necessarily instill confidence in me. I'm not into these types of Disney movies that are just remakes cashing in on nostalgia. I refuse to watch Beauty and the Beast. If I want to watch Beauty and the Beast, I'll just watch the original one.
Yeah.
Hercules, Tinkerbell and the Lost Treasure, and The Huntsman Winter's War. That one was with Chris Hemsworth and Charlize Theron and Emily Blunt and Jessica Chastain, Nick Frost. I didn't really hear that much great things about that movie, to be perfectly honest with you. So, I don't know. I'll reserve my judgment because we have no idea. Like you said, filmmakers surprise you all the time, and just because somebody's associated with something else doesn't mean they can't pull this off. But the only things that are keeping me excited for this are the presence of Jeffrey Dean Morgan and William Sadler as of right now.
Well, maybe I'm biased because I'm an actual independent filmmaker trying to come up in the business, but I wish Sam Raimi would go to little festivals and stuff and snatch some up-and-coming horror filmmakers who are really passionate about the genre.
Like he was when he made The Evil Dead, a student filmmaker like that.
Exactly. Like why keep picking mainstream directors who are schooled in other genres and throw them into horror? I mean, I'm sure he's looking at the bottom line as a producer. Something's going to get the asses in the seats, but I can't deny the trailer looks really good. So,
all right, we'll see how it ends up, though. We'll see.
Don't want to drink any haterade, as you would put it, Jason.
It's in the haterade. So, yeah, we'll see.
So that brings us to another one we've been reporting on for the last few weeks. Spiral from the Book of Saw is coming out on May 21st. Directed by Darren Lynn Bousman. I've been singing his praises lately. Written by Peter Goldfinger and Josh Stolberg, who both wrote Sorority Row in 2009, the Piranha 3D, the remake in 2010, and they also wrote Jigsaw in 2017, which I have not seen yet. This one stars Chris Rock, Samuel L. Jackson, and Max Minghella from Social Network and Horns. The synopsis is, working in the shadow of an esteemed police veteran played by Jackson, brash detective Ezekiel Zeke Banks, played by Chris Rock, and his rookie partner, played by Max Minghella, take charge of a grisly investigation into murders that are eerily reminiscent of the city's gruesome past. Unwittingly trapped in a deepening mystery, Zeke finds himself at the center of the killer's morbid game.
I'm super excited for this, and I'm not the world's biggest Saw fan. I will tell anybody that's never been a franchise that I'm particularly fond of. I really like the original Saw, but I'm not into the type of sequels and what that franchise turned into and what it started churning out. However, I know that Chris Rock didn't write it, but Chris Rock is the one who came up with the story. I think he's the one who actually approached the studio and gave them idea of what to do. And the reason he did it is because he said he had something really fresh and a real original, unique take on this franchise. And I imagine that's why the studio took to it so completely. I like that Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson are going to be in it.
Yes.
The premise sounds interesting. I even like the title, Spiral, the Book of Saw. We're probably going to get a lot more story than we get in the average Saw film. I imagine this is going to be a little bit more intricate than watching people, find their way out of traps and morality tales, which, of course, it's still Saw. I expect to see a lot of that, too. But I imagine this is going to be a completely new phase in the franchise, rethinking it from the ground up. And I really like Chris Rock as a creative person, as an imagination. He's one of my favorite comedians. He's really hilarious. I had the honor of meeting him when I was a teenager. Really sweet guy. I'm looking forward to it. And, of course, I love Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson is one of those actors who I love. But I have this thing with him where I feel like a lot of a lot of directors misuse Samuel L. Jackson. They call on him to do these riffs or caricatures on Jules from Pulp Fiction. I feel like a lot of directors just use him for the Samuel L. Jackson personality, just to have him hammy and shouting, and that's funny. I like all that, but Samuel L. Jackson is a much better director. Is a much better actor than that, and I feel like not enough filmmakers use him properly. Like Tarantino knows how to use Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah. Spike Lee knows how to use Samuel L. Jackson. I liked him in Hard 8. I like him in Eve's Bayou, got Casey Lemons. So I hope that we get something. I hope that the director is trying to concentrate on getting something more out of Samuel L. Jackson than just the usual what we expect from him. Because I feel like too many people fall on the caricature of Samuel L. Jackson and forget about what a wonderful actor he actually is and what he's capable of.
Yeah, he doesn't have to say motherfucker every other word to do a good job.
I mean, just watch him in Eve's Bayou, and you'll see what I mean. But yeah, and of course, Darren Lynn Bousman, who's a really interesting guy, probably a hero at this point as far as, I don't know if I would call him indie. He's somewhere between indie and mainstream. He's somewhere right between that. So I'm really looking forward to this, and it's his return to the franchise as well. He hasn't done one of these in a while.
I love the decisions they're making with this. Not only to bring a fresh perspective, bless you.
Thank you.
Not only bring a fresh perspective to the franchise, but to bring back what made the franchise great, which is Darren Lynn Bousman, which followed up the first Saw with some really good, solid entries. So they're giving a fresh premise, but going back to a director that they know did some effective movies for the franchise. So I think that's two very good decisions, and aside from the casting decisions, which I think is awesome too.
So do I.
The next one, I believe we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It's Army of the Dead. It's coming out on May 21st on Netflix. It's directed and co-written by Zack Snyder, who did the Dawn of the Dead remake and also all those movies for DC. It's co-written by Shay Hatton, who wrote John Wick 3, and Joby Harold, who was a producer on John Wick 3. It's been in development since March of 2007. That's quite a while. This one stars Dave Bautista from Guardians of the Galaxy, Ella Purnell from Intruders and Maleficent, Ana de la Reguera from Nacho Libre and From Dusk Till Dawn, the series. I'm excited about that. That series has a lot of great Latino actors in it. And Hiroyuki Sanada, who was in Sunshine, Danny Boyle's Sunshine. He's a veteran Japanese actor for over 50 years. So it's a great cast. Synopsis is: following a zombie outbreak in Las Vegas, a group of mercenaries take the ultimate gamble and venture into the quarantine zone to pull off the greatest heist ever attempted.
I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I'm not really a huge Zack Snyder fan. But one thing I can give him credit for as a filmmaker is He knows how to shoot action sequences in a way that most modern filmmakers don't understand. My biggest problem with a lot of action sequences and fight sequences is that they seem to follow this kind of Michael Bay formula where the camera is so jolty that you can't really comprehend what's going on. You don't have any understanding of the spatial relationship between things. You don't have like a clear grounding, and it's usually edited so rapid fire that it gives you the illusion of something happening when really it's just jumbled nonsense that is like together. And I think that's a big problem with a lot of American action movies and why a lot of them get under my skin. Zack Snyder actually knows how to shoot action scenes, to actually let the camera back it up and let the audience take in something well choreographed. Occasionally his slow motion doesn't work for me, but it helps. I'd rather have that because it slows everything down and helps to emphasize everything that's going on. I'm not crazy about Batman versus Superman, but that warehouse fight scene with Batman is incredible. That's a great piece of action filmmaking right there. So clear, everything is delineated, you can understand what's going on. And for a zombie heist film, I imagine usually with a premise like this, what I would, especially on Netflix, if I didn't know Zack Snyder was attached to this, I would think it's going to be a zombie action heist film, so it's going to be a lot of shaky cam and a lot of like rapid cutting, and I'm not going to be able to tell what's going on. I think the fact that it's Zack Snyder tells you that he's probably going to put a little bit more effort into directing and making something that the audience can actually understand and comprehend. So this actually does have potential, despite some of my snarky comments I made last week. I've given it some thought, and I'm looking forward to it because I want to be positive and I do want to like it. That's the truth. I sometimes make jokes and stuff like that about filmmakers, but at the end of the day, I like being proven wrong. I want to be proven wrong, and I'm always rooting for a filmmaker to get their vision out there. And kudos to Zack Snyder, and also kudos for him for finally getting his cut on the Justice League.
Yeah, and this is one of those, hordes of vicious zombies. Like they come in swarms. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those. So if he really went all out and used a lot of extras and stuff, it's probably going to look really cool. But if they went overboard on the CGI, I think I mentioned that last week. I don't think I'm going to like it, but I'm holding out judgment that this is another one where the trailer looks good. So
we shall see.
Check it out. Yeah.
So before we proceed, I have another thing that you might be interested in. There's no definite release date for this, but we do know it's going to be a summer release. The Fear Street Trilogy, based on the book series from R.L. Stine, Fear Street. Did you ever read Fear Street growing up, Michael?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I used to read a lot of R.L. Stine books. I mean, as a kid, I read Goosebumps, and as I got older, I started reading like Fear Street, and he has multiple series out there. So it's going to be directed by Leigh Janiak and based on the book series of the same name. It's going to be the first film in a trilogy that's going to be released 1 month after another on Netflix. So the idea is in the summer they're going to release one Fear Street movie. Next month they're going to get another one, and the next month they're going to get the final one. In 2019, when production began, the names of the movies are Fear Street 1994, Fear Street 1978, and Fear Street, is that 1966 or 1660? 1966. So these are all going to be period piece horror movies. I don't have that much information on the cast. Originally, it was going to be a Disney-friendly thing, and it was Disney Plus was trying to acquire it, and they were, of course, going to Disney it up. But Netflix stepped into the picture and acquired it instead, and I actually think that's a better choice than for Disney Plus.
I was going to ask if it was geared toward young adults like the books are, but if you read some of the books, you could really adapt those into a hardcore horror film.
I think that's meant towards, it is going to be geared towards young adults, but at the same time, young adults are not the same thing as little kids, and young adults can handle a lot more than our horror than a kid just watching Goosebumps would.
Yeah, so, are you thinking maybe a Summer of '84 vibe?
I think so, but even with more, I think so, but with a little bit more of an anthology film, and because that one of them is going to take place in the 70s and one of them is going to take place in the 60s, that's going to make things really interesting. I feel like it's common for movies, like especially horror movies, to be period pieces that take place in the 80s and 70s. That's nothing new. I feel like doing ones in the 60s is a little bit rarer.
Yeah, I love to see period piece horror films. Like I loved the Conjuring films, how they come off as period pieces, especially part 2.
Yeah, especially the second one. Fear Street 2, Fear Street 3. Yep. It's period pieces. So I'm looking forward to those. And they're being kept pretty under wraps. And I mean, we're already in March, so supposedly this is going to be released in the summer. So let's hope they get it out soon and figure out their release dates.
That's a bold decision to decide on an entire trilogy.
To greenlight the trilogy before seeing how the first one is received.
Yeah.
Probably also banking on R.L. Stine. He's probably, I think, what he used to be called the Stephen King for kids or Stephen King for teenagers, young adults. I think they're trying to bank on him. Plus, the recent Goosebumps movies were relatively successful financially. So, it seems like R.L. Stine is... I don't want to say he was never relevant, but I feel like his presence in pop culture kind of faded after like the late 90s. I feel like as a kid in the 90s, I remember Goosebumps is the phenomenon that made kids want to read. Kids were reading again. Kids generally don't like reading. You have to coerce them into it, and you have to like squeeze their arm. Goosebumps was one of those series that got kids actually into reading and got kids excited about reading. And I think people forgot about it because not long after that was a thing, Harry Potter came in and kind of overshadowed it as an even bigger phenomenon that got kids to read. But so I think people forget how influential R.L. Stine was in spreading literature amongst children.
Yeah, I think authors like R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike are actually better than the Goosebumps books, I thought.
Yeah. I like the Goosebumps books, but then again, I haven't read them since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I do remember growing up, and I did read a good handful of the Fear Street novels, and I really enjoyed them.
I used to love Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators, too. It's just a book series that Alfred Hitchcock put his name on, and I guess he approved of them. But it was like a Hardy Boys mystery type of series. I used to love that series.
Mixed in with, I'm guessing, macabre humor and murders, typical of the Alfred Hitchcock style.
Yeah. So the next one we got is A Quiet Place 2. This one's coming out May 28th. Can't wait for this one. It was originally set to be released on March 20th, 2020, then moved to April 2021, then to September, then back to May 28th. So this has been pushed all around because they're really banking on this to be a big success. This one was once again written and directed by John Krasinski, and it stars Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons, and Noah Jupe. All of them are returning from the first film, and they're going to add Cillian Murphy from 28 Days Later to the cast. Here's a synopsis. Following the deadly events at home, the Abbott family must now face the terrors of the outside world as they continue their fight for survival in silence. Forced to venture into the unknown, they quickly realize that the creatures that hunt by sound are not the only threats that lurk beyond the sand path. And John Krasinski actually said this will be... Actually, John Krasinski said that he will be in newly filmed flashbacks and said that he wrote himself into this film because the first film was a personal experience and a love letter to his children. So in this one, he wanted to explore how it all started, which is what a lot of people were asking for in the first one. They wanted more backstory. So they're getting it in this one, coming out May 28th.
So it functions as a prequel and a sequel.
Yeah.
Okay. I like the casting of Cillian Murphy. I feel like he hasn't been in too many things lately. He's just an excellent actor, and he has that kind of quality to him that makes him perfect for horror movies. He has a very sinister quality. I mean, that's why he was the Scarecrow in Batman Begins.
Yeah.
Perfect choice for that. I'm excited for it. I just feel like this one has been so all over the place that I've kind of just I'm at this point, I'm like, well, when it comes, and I'll just wait for it because I'm not going to be counting down the days for A Quiet Place 2 release date because it's been bounced over so many times. But I'm looking forward to it. Hope they expand upon the mythology. They do have to expand upon the mythology. They can't just do the same thing over because the first one was pretty bare bones. You know what I mean? It's it's wonderfully atmospheric. It's great use of silence. It's a lot of big tension and set pieces, and just enough of a story for you to understand what was going on to kind of get your grounding in the world. They really need to, Krasinski really needs to make sure, I'm sure that he really expanded the universe this time if he wants this to be that kind of franchise.
And I love a singular vision from a director where a director writes his own script, where, they don't bring a bunch of rewrites into it. They just keep his vision because the first one was so successful. Like, they had no idea that they gave it a certain budget, and they thought maybe it would go $5 million over the projected box office numbers, but it just blew everything, all their expectations out of the water, and became a huge worldwide success. So they started working on the sequel right away.
Yep, I'm excited for it. Before you move on, there's another interesting thing coming out. July 9th, 2021, The Forever Purge. It was originally set for a July 2020 release date, but of course, and that's usually when it comes out, it usually comes around Independence Day, kind of an ironic release date. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic stopped it from going on. This is a synopsis. Following the presidential elections from the last year and abolition of the purge, a Mexican couple escaping from a drug cartel is stranded on a Texas ranch. There they will be at the mercy of a group of outsiders who decide to unlawfully continue their own purge and turn against the couple and kill them. Now, I was not really looking that much forward to another Purge movie because I think that franchise is silly, even when I've enjoyed it. I do like the premise of this because this completely alters what it's about. The fact that the Purge is over and it's been outlawed, and it's going to be a group of people who are just rebelling against it. This makes me wonder, and also it's a Mexican couple fleeing violence from the border in Texas. So there's going to be a lot of heavy socio-political undertones with a film like this. It's going to be really laced with a lot of political subtext. It's going to definitely be controversial. And I have to wonder if this is going to almost function and as a metaphor for people who don't want to wear masks when they decide that people who don't want to wear masks in the same way that people apparently want to continue the purge even though it's been outlawed. So should be interesting. The film stars Ana de la Reguera, Josh Lucas, Tenoch Huerta, Levin Arambin, Will Patton, and Cassidy Freeman. It is going to be the 5th installment of the franchise, and it's a direct sequel to 2016's Purge: The Election Year. So it's the second appearance from Anna on this list.
Yeah. Yes, more Mexican actors.
I like that. And really, it's the Mexican cast, not fully Mexican cast, but Mexican actors, and a big shakeup from the premise, a big shakeup for the premise that makes me look forward to this a little bit more than I normally would a Purge film. If this were just like another Purge, the annual Purge, and the same thing over, I'd just be like, oh, okay, wash, rinse, repeat, we get it. But the fact that they're really altering this a lot and putting it in a world where it's illegal at this point and people are just don't want to accept it anymore, that's a little bit more interesting.
And it's the original Purge, from the beginning, it was it's kind of a silly high concept premise, but I did like it. There's a lot of cool shit to explore in that premise. And I literally keep waiting for every film. I'm like, maybe this one will be good. Maybe this one will be good. But they just never are. I mean, the first one I thought was good, but that's the only one that I actually liked was the first one, and nobody else seems to like that one. It's just it's a huge premise, kind of pigeonholed down into a home invasion thriller, but I still like it. And so I'm hoping this will finally breathe some life into this franchise that I thought never truly got off the ground.
Nope. But it was a financial success, though.
Yeah.
Massive success.
And that's all that matters to the studios. Bottom line. Asses in the seats, that's all we care about.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of something that's going to get asses in the seats, we got The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. This one's coming out June 2nd. It was supposed to be released September of 2020, but of course it got pushed to June 2nd of this year. This one is directed by Michael Chavez, so James Wan is not going to direct this one. He gave it over to the director of Curse of La Llorona, which I don't know. I mean, it wasn't a horrible movie. It did show skill, so I'm really rooting for him to make this really good. It's a good sign that it's written by David Leslie Johnson McCultrick, who wrote The Orphan and also co-wrote The Conjuring 2. This one is going to once again star Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, and it's also going to star Julian Hilliard, the little kid from Color Out of Space and Haunting of Hill House, and also our good friend Ronnie Jean Blevins. And the synopsis is, The Devil Made Me Do It reveals a chilling story of terror, murder, and unknown evil that shocked even experienced real-life paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. One of the most sensational cases from their files, it starts with a fight for the soul of a young boy, then takes them beyond anything they'd ever seen before to mark the first time in U.S. history that a murder suspect would claim demonic possession as a defense.
I did look into the case. The court did not allow them to use demonic possession as a defense, but it is the first one where they did attempt to use that as a defense. All right, so the story behind this, when I read into it, there is a lot of potential for a really, really juicy horror movie here. A really great supernatural horror movie. We just got to hope that the execution is there. Because there's a lot of potential. This is not the director who I would have chosen for such a project as big as this, especially for a story that's this juicy. But we'll see. This is, like I said, I really feel like this one has amazing potential, but it's all going to come down to the execution and to see if we can get something at least close to being, if Michael Chavez can get something at least close to matching up with what James Wan built up in the first two movies.
And if he tries to copy James Wan, it's going to be a failure.
Mm-hmm.
If he tries to take that type of aesthetic and the dynamic of the characters and put in his own flavor, I think it might be really good, because there's great source material to work with. I'm very familiar with this case. There's a lot of scary ass elements about it. And
I would say it's probably the juiciest case that they're delving into so far out of the ones. When I was doing some research and looking into it, like, this one has the most potential for like a really incredible story.
Yeah, I mean this franchise, the Conjuring movies themselves, not the rest of the shitty franchise, but the Conjuring movies themselves could go on forever, because there are countless stories that are very compelling, very scary. I watched the documentary on the Warrens on the Travel Channel. Pretty much all the stories that they told in that documentary were actually scarier than the movies that are put out so far.
Like I said, I'm rooting for it. I try to keep positive for everything. I'm not crazy about the Curse of La Llorona, but I'm going to give Michael Chavez another chance, and let's hope that he does something good with this this Conjuring film. And our friend Ronnie Blevins is in it, so we gotta root for it. We got a friend starring in this. He helped produce your film. He was on set with us, so yeah, let's root for it.
The next one is yet another sequel. This one's Don't Breathe 2. It's coming out on August 13th. This one is directed by Rodo Sayagwes, who is the co-writer of Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. So, and it's co-written by Fede Alvarez. So Fede Alvarez handed the directing duties over to Rodo. This one stars Stephen Lang once again, and Stephanie Arkila from, she just had a guest spot on Penny Dreadful, City of Angels. It's supposed to be really good. I haven't seen it yet. So that actress is doing really good. And the synopsis is, the blind man has been hiding out for several years in an isolated cabin and has taken in and raised a young girl orphaned from a devastating house fire. Their quiet life together is shattered when a group of criminals kidnap the girl, forcing the blind man to leave his safe haven to save her. Yeah, making him a hero after they made him do some really nasty shit in the first one. They're making him a hero.
All right, I get that. All right, and I think this comes from, there's a certain interpretation of Don't Breathe from people, and I actually understand it, and it makes sense, that the blind man was as nasty as he was minding his own business. Nobody, he wasn't bothering anybody. He was in his house. It's the young adults who broke in and were acting as thieves who are the real villains, even though he's obviously the one that comes across as the villain.
Yeah.
However, even though you know that they were in the wrong for breaking through, he was never sympathetic at all. I never viewed him as a sympathetic character. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not a fan of this premise. It doesn't sound like all that great of an idea. I don't know how I'm going to be able to root for him after I saw him as he was in the original Don't Breathe. Is this going to be another thriller? There's something about it that feels very franchisey, about making the blind man some kind of hero who has to rescue a little girl this time. I don't know. I mean, like all films, I'm going to root for it to do good, and I want it to do good. I mean, I wish Rodo Sayaguas all the best, as well as Fede Alvarez. We don't have enough representation in the film community, so I can't root against that too much. But I have to be honest. This premise really doesn't excite me very much. There's just something about it that just leaves me with a little skepticism as to what this is going to be. This is not the idea of a Don't Breathe movie.
Well, I'm thinking it might be a little bit like the first one, where it starts out like you think that the old man is the victim and he's kind of the anti-hero, and then maybe you find out toward the end that he's not so good again. I don't know. I really hope they explore that dynamic. I think they have to in order to make it a good movie, don't they?
Yeah, but here's another thing. I also think not every horror movie requires a sequel. Not everything needs a sequel, and I've actually have never been convinced that Don't Breathe is a movie that needs a sequel. I know there's a lot of fans that have been clamoring for a sequel to Don't Breathe, and I really like Don't Breathe quite a bit. I think it's an excellent horror movie, but I think it's just that, an excellent horror movie. I don't see it as when I watch that, I don't see a potential franchise there. That's just me. But it doesn't seem like you're going to make a trilogy out of this blind man and turn him into some kind of anti-hero. It's just, I don't know. I'm not fully convinced that the movie needs a sequel. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, in anything that's successful, studios start clamoring, like, how can we repeat this success, you know?
Mm-hmm. So I'll keep an open mind, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, they have to explore that he's a bad guy. And do you wish at all that they would have continued with the cliffhanger at the end of part 1, where you think he's coming after Jane Levy?
I don't know. That feels too franchisey.
Yeah. I mean, both premises sound franchisey.
Yeah, it does this. The original Don't Breathe, what makes it special is it feels like it was a mainstream horror release that had the feel of something a little bit more underground, a little bit more indie and grotty to it. It's not the kind of polished horror film or polished horror premise that is ripe for a franchise or sequels. It just doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
That seemed very much like a singular experience, even though it left with a cliffhanger.
But I feel like the cliffhanger is meant just for that movie. You're meant to go off thinking about it. I don't think it's better if it remains unanswered because it lives inside your head forever.
Yeah, it's what I do with a lot of my movies. I leave a cliffhanger at the end and then cut it off. It's not meant to continue from there. You're meant to imagine what continues from there.
Yeah. So
that's stuff I like to do.
We'll see. Maybe they'll surprise us.
I hope so. I mean, it's the same writer. He did really good with the first one, so let's hope he continues with this one.
Yeah.
One of the most anticipated sequels for me, anyway, and horror films altogether, Candyman, is finally coming out August 27th. Original release date was June 12th, 2020. Then it was moved to September 2020, then moved to October 2020, and now we're finally going to get it August 27th, 2021. This one is directed and co-written by Nia DaCosta, co-written by Jordan Peele and Wynn Rosenfeld, who is a producer of BlacKkKlansman, the Hunters series, and the Twilight Zone series. This one stars Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. he plays the baby that Helen saved in the original Candyman, and he's also going to play a hallucinatory reflection of Candyman. It also stars Teyona Paris. She's from If Beale Street Could Talk and WandaVision. And also Nathan Stewart Jarrett and Coleman Domingo, who was also in If Beale Street Could Talk and Fear the Walking Dead. Tony Todd and Vanessa Estelle Williams will return from the first film, and Cassie Kramer will play the role of Helen Lyle from the first film. Mm-hmm. And here's a synopsis. For as long as the residents can remember, the housing projects of Chicago's Cabrini Green neighborhood were terrorized by a word-of-mouth ghost story about a supernatural killer with a hook for a hand, easily summoned by those daring to repeat his name 5 times into the mirror. In the present day, a decade after the last of the Cabrini Towers were torn down, a visual artist named Anthony McCoy and his girlfriend, an art gallery director named Brianna Cartwright, moved into the luxurious loft condo in Cabrini, now gentrified beyond recognition and inhabited by the upwardly mobile millennials. With Anthony's painting career on the brink of stalling, a chance encounter with a Cabrini Green old-timer exposes Anthony to the tragically horrific nature of the true story behind the Candyman. Anxious to maintain his status in the Chicago art world, Anthony begins to explore these macabre details in his studio as fresh grist for paintings, unknowingly opening a door to a complex past that unravels his own sanity and unleashes a terrifying viral wave of violence that puts him on a collision course with destiny. Man, that was a mouthful, but sounds so interesting and so cool.
This is probably one of my top 2 or 3 most anticipated horror releases of 2020. Partially because Candyman is one of my favorite horror movies, one of my favorite movies, period. I love Candyman. I've seen it so many times. I think it's a masterpiece. Partially is the talent involved, too. Nia DaCosta, we get a female filmmaker here, which is exciting. Jordan Peele, who I love, who is the perfect person to be tackling the kind of mythology for this. And that's another thing that I like about this is that Candyman has always been a black horror story, and I feel like all of the filmmakers behind it have been white filmmakers. It'll be interesting to finally get Candyman from a black perspective, from the perspective of the culture that movie is actually about, that the story is actually about. So I'm looking forward to that. I really like Yahya Abdul-Mateen. He was excellent in Watchmen. I don't want to reveal the extent of what his role is in that show, but he was really great in that. I think he has a great look. I think he's perfect for this type of for this kind of role, and I could totally see him being as a Tony Todd type as well, like a hallucinatory reflection of Candyman. Even more interest, Tony Todd is in this himself, so we are going to get the original Candyman. What I imagine is it's Tony Todd, but using Yahya Abdul-Mateen to kind of I imagine maybe possess his body and take over him. That's why he's kind of becoming the Candyman, or kind of melding with that personality. So it'll be interesting how they incorporate the original Tony Todd Candyman into it, along with Yahya Abdul-Mateen's hallucinatory reflection. Like I said, I'm so excited for this. That trailer that we got last year looks incredible. It looks beautifully shot. It looks stylish. It brings back just the right cast members. It gives you chills. The music used in it is great. This premise is juicy. This is another thing. This feels like the premise sounds like the kind of sequel that only a fan would make. The type of sequel that really delves back into the mythology of Candyman and expands it and adds a new story. The premise of this does not read like a typical slasher sequel, another Candyman film. He's back. You say his name 5 times and he's going to come and kill you. This feels like the plot and the story are going to be much more intricate, much more involved, and it's not going to have the feel of a typical slasher movie sequel. Maybe I'm hyping this up in my head too much, but I am super stoked for this movie, and I think it's going to be terrific. I think all the talent involved is great. I think we're finally going to get the Candyman sequel that we all deserve. So I'm excited as fuck for this.
Yeah, this is the Candyman sequel I wanted from the beginning. I mean, especially after rewatching 2 and 3. Holy shit, dude. Let's get a fresh perspective on this franchise. And I'm so glad that they went with Tony Todd as Candyman.
So
and I don't know if you followed it, but there was so many interviews with Tony Todd along the way. Each time you'd hear about rumors of the actor, and then the actor was going to be a form of Candyman. And he assumed that they weren't going to call him and he wasn't going to be Candyman. And he was so gracious about it. He was so happy that they were going to explore that character the way they were doing, that he didn't even care that much that he wasn't going to be Candyman. And then in the end, he is going to be Candyman after all. I'm so happy about that.
I think they did that as a fan thing because when you like want to release information, you want to keep people excited. So I think they wanted to wait to drop that, like build up to, we're going to build up the hype. This person is in it. Leave the audience unsure. Is like Tony Todd coming back? Is he not? And when it's finally confirmed, it's going to get people excited. So I think it was part of a marketing strategy to slowly dole that information out and probably not even let him in on it that, hey, we don't know, we don't want him to say anything. We don't want Tony to leak it or anything. So we're not going to even tell him that we want to cast him yet. So,
and as far as I'm concerned, the trailer looks so good that I think it's obvious that it's going to be great. I mean, there's no way you can have a trailer that good. Well, the Suicide Squad trailer was really good.
Whenever anybody says that, you always have to say, but Suicide Squad. But Suicide Squad. Yeah, I know. So, yeah.
Really hoping for that one. And probably the only film that I'm looking forward to more than Candyman is Malignant. This is my personal most anticipated film, horror film of the year. It's coming out finally on September 10th. Directed and co-written by James Wan. Also co-written by Akilah Cooper, who was in Hellfest, who wrote Hellfest, and Ingrid Basu, who is an actress from The Nun who came up with the story. And this one stars Annabelle Wallace, who was in Annabelle, Maddie Hassan, who was in God Bless America, the Bob Pitt Goldthwait movie, and also We Summon the Darkness, and Jake Abel from the Supernatural series, and Jacqueline McKenzie from Deep Blue Sea, and of course McKenna Grace from A Little Girl from Haunting of Hell House and Annabelle Comes Home. And still, I don't know how they've done it, but they still kept all the details of this premise under wraps. I still have no details of what it's about, and I don't want to know. All I know is it's a James Wan movie that's going back to his roots. It's going to have real locations, no sets, no sound stages, and he's going to go back to all practical, and I can't wait for this one.
What I think is another thing I think is good. I think there's a trade-off for us. Like, as much as we want to see a new James Wan Conjuring film, I'd rather have him do this. I like the idea of him going small again and going back to outside of the studio system where it's not going to have such a mainstream feel. I think that gives him a little bit more chance to try to make it scarier in different ways that he might not be allowed to make the Conjuring movie, because the Conjuring movies are scary, but they are also partially designed to appeal to a very wide audience. That's why they're such big blockbusters. This seems like it's going to cater to like the hardcore fan base. Like, this is getting back to the nitty gritty of how I started. Going back outside the studio system, going low budget again. And it's interesting, is going low budget after doing a bunch of big budget stuff. I mean, he did fucking Aquaman, which made $1 billion, and Fast and the Furious, and of course the Conjuring film. So it'll be interesting to see a filmmaker, because you don't really see this often. I would be like shocked if like Christopher Nolan announced that he's going to make another movie like Following or Memento. I'd be like, really? Cool.
Yeah.
And, I like that about this. I like that he is going back, and I think that there's potential for this to be horrifying in ways that he might not be allowed to make a studio horror film. And also, because it's an original story, we always want our talented filmmakers to tackle things that they've never tackled. And maybe, as far as James Wan's concerned, he shot his load on the Warrens. He did his stories. He's satisfied with them. He's helping. Now it's time for him to move on to a different type of horror story and hand the reins off to an upcoming filmmaker that he wants to promote. So ultimately, I think it's worth it for him not to do The Conjuring, to do something like this. I would ultimately take him doing this any day of the week. I always encourage filmmakers to, when they have a chance to do another franchise or a sequel or an original film, go with the original one.
Yeah, if he would have continued with the Conjuring films, I think he would have been, pushed to make each one more and more of a spectacle. and go
Yeah.
bigger and bigger when that's not necessarily a franchise for that. It needs to stay relatively small.
And grounded.
Yeah, and it can't go out in too many outrageous places.
Mhm.
But I love that he's going back to his roots. I mean, when he started venturing away from horror, he ventured way far away from it, and then even farther. And he talked about, you know, not even wanting to do horror anymore. And then all of a sudden, when he not only comes out with another horror film, but it's going to be something totally new, totally original, with all practical effects and everything. Oh, I was on board from the beginning. Can't wait.
Can't wait. I wish we could say more, but we don't know anything.
Yeah. And then another one I can't wait for on a much larger scale, Halloween Kills, is finally coming out October 15th. The original release date was October 16th of 2020. It was pushed forward a whole year to this year. And it's directed and co-written once again by David Gordon Green, co-written by Danny McBride and Scott Teems. And it stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Judy Greer, and Andy Matichak, who are going to return as the Strodes. Nick Castle and James Jude Courtney are returning as the Shape. And Anthony Michael Hall is going to play Tommy Doyle. Kylie Richards returns from the first film as Tommy's friend Lindsay. Charles Cypers returns as Sheriff Lee Brackett. And the synopsis is still set on Halloween 2018. Laurie Strode and her family work with new and old allies to form a mob against Michael Myers, who is still loose in Haddonfield. And also, they already announced Halloween Ends is scheduled for the following year, October 14th, 2022.
Normally we'd be getting Halloween Ends this year. That's how it should have been. So, this one's a little bit tricky for me. So I'm just going to disclose something interesting to the audience. I'm actually in the midst, deep into the Halloween Kill script. I'm not going to say, but I have a connection that was able to get me a copy of it, and I've been reading into it, and I'm pretty deep into it. And all I'm going to say is, holy shit, this is going to be good. If the and there's no reason for me to not believe that if David Gordon Green's on, the execution is not going to live up to the last one. This is a better script than Halloween. It still does the fan servicey things that Halloween does, that Halloween 2018 does those fan servicey things, but the fan service in here expands the mythology and serves to like kind of widen it up instead of just being a reference to get the audience excited. I don't want to release too much details, but I do know they return to the original Halloween, the night of, and what happened after. And oh man, I can't say too much, but fuck, I'm really excited for this. I'm in the midst of reading it right now, and I think they have something very cool cooked up for this Halloween Kills flick. I'm excited.
So John Carpenter wasn't just blowing smoke up our ass then.
No, this is like it's for the fans in the best way possible, not fans in a pandering way and then just giving them what they want without challenging their expectations, giving them what they want and more, giving them what they want and blowing it up, giving them what they want and expanding upon it. These are not just references to things from the past for the sake of having references to things from the past. There's something I can't say anymore, but I will say, as somebody who is deep in the midst of reading the script, it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
I'm one of the fans that adored Halloween 2018. I nerded out on it. I was very nostalgic for it. Loved it, fell in love with it first time I watched it. And then I've watched it 2 or 3 times since then. It just gets better with each watch. It's such a solid film. I don't know what all the complaints are about. F that. It's a very, very good film. And again, like with Candyman, it's the sequel I wanted years ago. Because, I mean, Halloween 2 didn't even live up to the expectations of this franchise. So I'm really excited about this one.
Me too. But I have to stop speaking before I get myself in trouble.
Yeah. Don't give too much away.
Yeah.
Don't blow their load for them, James.
Yeah.
Then you'll see the article on Bloody Disgusting. Podcast host spoils the Halloween Kills movie.
Yeah, I'm not going to be responsible that I'm not having Universal Studios come after me like that because I shouldn't even have the script, let's be honest.
Could get us some recognition, though. Bad recognition.
Next story, next movie, Michael.
Yeah. All right, this one is another great director that's returning to horror. Last Night in Soho is coming out October 21st, 2021. Directed and co-written by the great Edgar Wright, who of course did Shaun of the Dead and Baby Driver. Co-written by Christy Wilson Cairns, and she wrote 1917, so that's very high-profile writer on this thing. It stars Anya Taylor-Joy from The Witch, Thomasin Harcourt Mackenzie from Jojo Rabbit, Matt Smith from Doctor Who and recently played Charles Manson in Charlie Says, pretty decent little movie. Diana Rigg, who was in the original Avengers and in Game of Thrones, and this was her final film. Here's a synopsis. A young girl who is passionate about fashion design mysteriously enters the 1960s, where she encounters her idol, a dazzling wannabe singer. But 1960s London is not what it seems, and time seems to fall apart with shady consequences. I love movies about time, about messing with the time and space continuum and all that. I love Edgar Wright. He's a very inventive, original filmmaker. He's got mad skills. I can't wait for anything that he does, and everything that I hear about this, I'm even more excited about it, especially the writer of 1917. Give it to me now.
I'm excited for this one too. Edgar Wright is one of the most gifted stylists in movies right now. If you think about a movie like Baby Driver or Scott Pilgrim, which has style up the ass, just style to spare, or
and boldness.
Bold. He's a very bold filmmaker with bold choices. He's obviously already tackled a little bit of horror with the Shaun of the Dead film, a little bit of a horror comedy. I always look forward to anything Edgar Wright does. That's the reality, whether it's horror or not. So even if this wasn't a horror movie, just the announcement that Edgar Wright's making a new film, that was enough to get me on board as it is. The premise actually sounds pretty good. I know what a big fan Edgar Wright is of horror movies. I've read interviews of him where he speaks on different horror movies and he outlines what he loves about them. I know how passionate he is. So I'm looking forward to it.
And plus, Anya Taylor-Joy has become one of those actresses where you just want to check out whatever she's in because it's going to be interesting.
I still haven't seen The Queen's Gambit, but I know she got so much critical acclaim for that. And then she's already done great in horror with The Witch and why am I getting Split?
Split?
Yes.
Split, yeah.
M. Night Shyamalan Split. So we'll see how this goes. I'm looking forward to it, though.
And further wash the taste of the New Mutants out of our mouths.
Skipped it. I already skipped it.
All right, the next one sounds really interesting, too. Antlers is coming out October 29th. The original release date was April 2020 and then moved to February 2021, and now it finally landed on October 29th of this year. It's directed and co-written by Scott Cooper, who directed Crazy Heart, Out of the Furnace, and Black Mask. So this is no spring chicken. I mean, it was no rookie when it comes to directing. And it's co-written by Nick Antosca, who wrote The Forest and created the show The Act. And the movie is based on his short story, The Quiet Boy. And it's produced by Guillermo del Toro, which is a really good sign. It stars Kerry Russell from Dark Skies, Jesse Plemons from Breaking Bad and The Irishman. And here's a synopsis. Julia Meadows, played by Kerry Russell, a school teacher in small-town Oregon, and her brother Paul, played by Jesse Plemons, the local sheriff, become concerned about one of her students, a young boy named Lucas Weaver, who is secretly keeping a supernatural creature inside his house. I noticed there's a lot of antlers in horror films recently, like The Wretched and The Dark and the Wicked. So this continues this trend of antlers.
Isn't there another horror movie called Antlers already with Daniel Radcliffe?
Oh no, that was Horns.
Horns. Okay, I knew I got them mixed up. I'm so many antlers and horns and stuff. I'm like, okay. Kerry Russell is what has me interested in this. Did you ever get to see The Americans?
I haven't seen that one yet.
In The Americans, she plays a KGB spy, obviously in cahoots with the Soviets and Russia in the 1980s, posing as a normal American family. She actually won. Let's see. Very acclaimed show, was nominated and won a lot of awards. If you haven't seen it, I recommend check it out. It's not horror, but it's an excellent TV series. It's really engrossing, and she's a terrific actress. She was also in another good movie called Waitress some years back. I don't know if you ever heard about them. The director of that movie was unfortunately killed before the film had a chance to come out.
Oh, man.
And Jesse Plemons, who seems to be everywhere these days, he was good on Black Mirror. I liked him in Fargo, in season 2 of Fargo. He's in the current film with Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield, Judas and the Black Messiah. What else was he in? He was in The Irishman recently with Scorsese. He's getting married to Kirsten Dunst. Wait, are they married or are they just engaged? I know that's his girl, is Kirsten Dunst. I'd have to check to see if they're married or not. But his career seems to be really on fire right now. He was just in the El Camino movie, Breaking Bad. He was on Breaking Bad. Black Mass. I'm thinking of Ending Things, which is another movie that came out in 2020. He seems to be it right now. He's really killing it with his career. Like, this guy is in everything. If you look up at his IMDb or Wikipedia page, this guy is fucking busy as hell, and he's working with every major filmmaker that he gets a chance to. So
he just got another great part. I forget which one it was. He just got a major part recently.
Yeah, he did. It's too many to keep count of.
Yeah.
Jungle, Antlers, The Power of the Dog, Judas and the Black Messiah. He's in El Camino, The Irishman, the movie Vice, Game Night, Hostiles, Bridge of Spies with Steven Spielberg. Jeez. He was in The Master with the Paul Thomas Anderson movie with Joaquin Phoenix and the late, great Philip Seymour Hoffman and Amy Adams. So this guy is... I don't know what it is. He must have a fucking great agent, because look at all the shit he's in.
I mean, he's mixing it up with the greats, and he always nails his part every time I've seen him.
I liked him in Black Mirror, the USS Callister. I don't know if you remember that episode.
Yes.
He plays that creep, that sadistic creep who keeps all those digital people trapped in the game.
Yeah.
So I'm happy for him. I'm more excited for the actors in here, Kerry Russell and Jesse Plemons, because I don't know what to make of the premise. I'm sure it'll be interesting, but it just seems a weird phenomenon with all these horns and antlers, and I'm getting them confused now.
Yeah. Well, I just love when Academy Award-winning directors delve into horror.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, let's see what you got.
Okay, so next up we have Terrafire 2. Now, we're doing this very loosely. Terrafire 2 is still in the post-production stages, and I think they shot most of it. The director, Damien Leone, is working on finishing it up. I actually reached out to David Howard Thornton, Art the Clown, before we did this podcast, because I was trying to figure out when's the release date. And he said, we're hoping and we're aiming for Halloween. So this is not a guarantee. I'm not telling you that this is, and for all we know, it could possibly push back to 2022. I hope that's not the case. But if all goes well, we can accept Terrafire 2 to come out right around Halloween. And that's going to be kind of busy, because around Halloween, we're going to be getting, what else are we getting? We're going to be getting Antlers and Last Night in Soho and Halloween Kills. So it's going to have quite a bit of a competition to keep up with in terms of horror movies, especially as in a more indie release as opposed to those studio films that was crowdfunded. It's going to have David Howard Thornton returning as Art the Clown. We have Felissa Rose of Sleepaway Camp fame coming to join the cast. Lauren Lavera as Sienna Shaw. Elliot Fullman as Jonathan Shaw. Sarah Voigt as Barbara. Of course, and the biggest hype around it is the Carrie prom scene that they're talking about. We talked about it before. The original Terrafire, his most notorious scene, is where he hangs a girl upside down and saws her in half all the way down, very slowly and graphically and torturously. And it was probably one of the most show-stopping, shocking kill scenes in any slasher movie of anything in recent memory. So apparently they upped the budget, and they're going to completely top it with a scene where Art the Clown is a mass murderer and goes on a Carrie-style prom-style killing spree.
Yes, check out our interview with David Howard Thornton. It's episode 67.
Yes.
We ask him all about it.
Yeah.
And he gives us as much as he can, but
Yeah. So, according to him, hopefully by Halloween. That's not a guarantee, but if all goes well, fingers crossed, they'll get that out around that time.
And the synopsis of this one is, after mutilating sole survivor Victoria Hayes and committing suicide upon police confrontation, Art is resurrected by a sinister being a year later and begins a hunt for two unsuspecting siblings in the Miles County area on Halloween night. Damien Leone actually wanted to do a Terrafire film that focuses more on the characters and the story for a more narrative-driven film. He already had funding in place from private investors, but he launched an Indiegogo campaign to raise the money for a particular scene that you were talking about, the one that's similar to Carrie with that's heavy on practical effects. The campaign reached 430% of its goal and raised $250,000, which is a lot more than they went for. The main character, Sienna, played by Lavera, is a character Leone created more than a decade ago from a 2008 film that was never actually made. The character has evolved since then, but was always a final girl in an Angel Valkyrie costume.
Interesting. So, we've been talking about this for quite a while now. I think, over a year talking about the Terrifier sequel. So, let's just hope that it gets out. That's I mean.
And honestly, I'm not crazy about a director catering to fans who complain that the first one didn't have enough backstory. But I know Damien Leone and David Howard Thornton are going to do great with it.
The reason I'm okay with it is because it's going to change it from just being another slasher movie. It's gonna have a little bit more. It'll make it stand out, or it'll help it to stand apart from the original.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we finish off, I had another one. Did you have one more, or was I confused? Because I do have another one that I wanted to talk about.
I have one more.
Okay, you do have one more. I just want to make sure. Okay.
So you do mine before you do yours?
Yeah. The only reason I want to do this one last is because there's no release date for this movie. It's just 2021. So we can't put it in any sort of order as of yet.
So the final 2021 movie I'm going to talk about isn't exactly horror, but it is horror adjacent, and it does appeal to a lot of horror fans. Ghostbusters Afterlife is coming out November 11th. This one has been in development longer than any other movie on the list. It's been in development since 1989 when Part 2 came out. All kinds of incarnations came out. Dan Aykroyd wrote a couple scripts for it that were rejected. Bill Murray wasn't into it for years, but he finally is. The original release date was July 2020. Then it was March 5th, 2021. Then October 21, 2021. Then June 2021. And finally settled on November 11th, 2021. Directed and co-written by Jason Reitman, who directed Juno. Co-written by Jill Keenan. It's a first-time writer as the director of the Poltergeist remake, which isn't a good sign, and Monster House, which was pretty good, but it was a kids' movie. It's produced by Ivan Reitman, of course, the director of the first one. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver, and Annie Potts are all returning from the original. This one is going to star McKenna Grace. I've mentioned her. She's going to be in Malignant. Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things and It, and Paul Rudd. The synopsis is, after being evicted from their home... What's that?
You forgot Carrie Coon.
Yes, Carrie Coon is going to be in this one as well.
Yes.
It stars... Synopsis is, after being evicted from their home, two children and their single mother moved to a farm inherited from their late grandfather located in Somerville, Oklahoma. When the town experiences a series of unexplained earthquakes, the children discover their family's link to the original Ghostbusters, who have become something of a myth, as many have long since forgotten the events of the Manhattan crossrip of 1984. They discover the secret legacy that their grandfather left behind. And this is another one, really solid trailer. The trailer looks really good. I'm looking forward to this one. It looks to be quite a bit more dramatic than the first one, a little bit less of a comedy, but it still seems to have some comedic elements to it.
All right, so I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not really a huge Ghostbusters fan.
How dare you?
I'm also not an E.T. fan. I love Stranger Things, This is just a personal opinion, and I know this is going to piss off previous generations, and I'm going to be called an outrageous millennial with his ridiculous opinions. I actually think that Stranger Things does a better job of going what Ghostbusters and E.T. were after in one show than those movies did on their own. And I know that's a controversial statement, and I'll probably get smacked for saying it by some people, but that is my honest opinion. I hope they take Stranger Things influence back. Like, it'd be kind of cool that influenced Stranger Things, and if Stranger Things can influence it back, especially with the presence of Finn Wolfhard in here. Perfect for it, because of course on Stranger Things they were all Ghostbusters fans and they dressed up like that for Halloween. I love Carrie Coon. She's amazing in Fargo and especially The Leftovers. Amazing show. We'll see. I'm more excited for the cast than anything. We're gonna get Bill Murray back. You're gonna have Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver, Annie Potts. So it should be interesting. If nothing else, it should be a spectacle. But I have to admit, I'm not a huge Ghostbusters person.
How dare you?
I know. I'm sorry.
It's a beloved classic.
So, do you have anything else to say about that one?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry if I soured your excitement. All right. So the last one I want to talk about is this is a very interesting sounding movie that's coming out, and I'm saving it for last because it's a 2021 movie. They haven't selected a release date. It is called Wendell and Wild. Wendell and Wild is going to be a stop-motion dark fantasy horror comedy directed by Henry Selick, the director of Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. And yes, Tim Burton did not direct The Nightmare Before Christmas because people always have that misconception. It all comes from his imagination. It's his story. It's his characters. All the way that they look is based on artwork from Tim Burton that's very exacting. So it is very much Tim Burton's vision. However, the director of that movie is Henry Selick, very accomplished stop-motion filmmaker. Also did Coraline, which is also a very good I would say children's horror themed movie. Would you say?
Yeah, but it's pretty creepy though.
Yeah, it's creepy, like a horror movie for like kids and young adults. Like that's how best I would describe it. So what makes this more interesting? The script is going to be by Henry Selick, Jordan Peele, Keegan-Michael Key, and Chloe McLeod Chapman. So per Deadline, Jordan Peele is bringing along his Key and Peele co-star Keegan-Michael Key to write the screenplay and star with him. Wendell and Wild is a stop-motion animation project that will be about two demon brothers who must face off against their arch nemesis, a nun named Sister Helly, and her two goth teens, Kat and Raoul. Production has already begun on the film, and it's going to be released through Netflix sometime this year. This sounds cool, doesn't it?
That sounds all good.
Like the director of The Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline, a reuniting of Key and Peele. I mean, it's always cool to see those two guys together. More horror from Jordan Peele in a completely different style. Dude, that guy's fucking everywhere in horror. He's already done two movies two acclaimed, successful movies. One is an Oscar-winning movie within a short amount of time. He did The Twilight Zone for a couple seasons, and it wasn't canceled because it wasn't a success. He just walked away from it, I imagine, because he's so damn busy. He's co-writing the Candyman sequel and producing it. He's doing the stop-motion thing with Keegan-Michael Key and Henry Selick. This just sounds... This guy's busy. Let's say he's really digging his hooks into the horror genre.
He took the success of Get Out and really ran with it, dude, and really capitalized on it in a great way. I love all these little tentacles spreading out into the horror genre, and he's doing a lot of good work.
Lovecraft Country, that's another one.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be released by Netflix. I like the director. I like all the talent involved, and I love stop motion animation. I think it's so much cooler than and don't get me wrong, I actually like a lot of Pixar movies and like the computer animation. It's beautiful and everything, but there's something very human about the stop motion animation, the way that they feel like they're so real. It doesn't have that digital quality of something being animated in a certain way. There's something so physical and tangible to it. And
that depth of field where you can reach. You feel like you can reach out and touch the characters.
Oh yeah. So if you ever have a chance to watch Nightmare Before Christmas in HD, I've never seen it in 4K, but I'm sure it's amazing. But it looks like the set is inside the television screen, and you could reach in and touch everything. And anybody who knows me knows that I love The Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm that cliche of that kid who watched it hundreds of times and has a bunch of merchandise and shit. I love The Nightmare Before Christmas, so nice to see Henry Selick do something again. I have nothing negative to say about this. This all sounds good. There's nothing about it that doesn't excite me.
Yeah, everything about it sounds good, and I like that there's more horror animation and stuff coming out.
Yep. Cool premise too. Jordan Peele, Henry Selick, Keegan-Michael Key, animated horror coming your way through Netflix.
Oh man, look at all and we discussed mostly mainstream notable horror releases, and imagine all the stuff all the indie stuff that's going to be released in between. This is going to be another great year for horror.
Yep. I'm looking forward to most of it. So
Next week we're doing the best of 2020, and then you'll see what a great shape the horror genre is in. That so many 2020 movies got pushed to 2021, and there's still a plethora of awesome releases, dude, that we're going to go over next week.
Next week, we are going to do our 2020 special. Mike and I are each going to unveil our own respective list of our top 10 horror movies of 2020. We do not consult with each other when we make these lists, and we don't know what our picks are before we get on the podcast and announce them. So both of us are going to learn quite a bit from each other's list. Follow us on Instagram at Pickles Horror Show. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Pickles Horror Show. Also, check out our Flow page. For those curious, our Flow page will be in the description of this podcast. It'll lead you to everywhere that this is available, where you could watch our podcast through YouTube. You could listen to it through Spotify, Apple Podcast, or SoundCloud. Soon we're going to be expanding to Anchor and other platforms as well. But like I said, just click on our Flow page. It'll give you access to our podcast everywhere, as well as access to everything we're doing on social media. So you could follow all of our projects, our podcasts, upcoming films that we're working on, that we're producing, some of Michael's writing and directing. We have a lot of stuff going on. Some interviews coming up this year. We haven't done an interview in a while, but we're going to be getting some exciting interviews this year. We have a lot going on, so please please keep up with us. Keep following us. Until next week, folks. Happy
horror.